Hello, everyone. Welcome to you all. We're going to let a few more people log on before we get started. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight for Hakkaisan's Amasake webinar. I think we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. I have a lot of Amasake mixings in front of me, so we're going to do a tasting later. It'll be a lot of fun. If you could do me a favor, if you are familiar with Zoom, if you could open up the chat and let me know if you can see me and hear me all right. That would help me out a lot. Just let me know if you can see me and hear me and everything is going well. Loud and clear. Oh, good. Wonderful. Fantastic. Great. I'm just going to give it another minute. I hope everyone is excited to talk about Amasake tonight. I have to tell you, I'll tell you later, but for those of you that are logged on now, I'll tell you that I was not an Amasake convert when I first tasted it, but I am a full-fledged apostle of Amasake now, and that's one of the reasons I really wanted to do this webinar, was to introduce people outside of Japan to the joys of Amasake. We're going to get really deep into it today, but I really hope that you will enjoy all the suggestions and all the info I have for you today on Amasake. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I hope it becomes more popular here in the States. So let's see. Oh, we have a good crowd coming together. Wonderful. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. For those of you who have not used Zoom before, by now, probably most of you have used Zoom a lot since we've all been in lockdown. But for those of you that have not used Zoom before, right below my picture, you should see a button that says chat. Go ahead and click on that. And then if you go to the very bottom of where you see the chat, there's a blue little drop down. You should change that to all panelists and attendees. If you put all panelists, I'm the only person who's going to see your comment. If you put all panelists and attendees, then you can share your comment with everybody logged on. So please change that to and attendees, and we can all share in your comments. There's also, right below my picture, there's also a button called Q&A. So if you have a question, sometimes the chat moves a little bit fast and things might get lost in there, and I'm monitoring everything all by myself tonight. So if you have a question specific to something I mentioned or something about Amasake, please feel free to put it in that Q&A panel, and that way I will be sure not to miss your question. And let's see, I think that's it for the housekeeping. If anything comes up, just shoot me a question in the Q&A panel. And final request, now that we're about to get started, please in the chat, let me know where you're logging in from. We had a lot of registrations from faraway places. I'm here in New York. So please let me know what part of the world you're tuning in from tonight. And I would love to know that so we can say hello to you from all parts of the world, everyone enjoying Amasake together. All right, let's see. New York City, Mexico. Hola, Mexico. Silicon Valley, Miami Beach, DC, Los Angeles, Iowa, Rhode Island, Philippines, Lima, Peru. Hello, Peru. I've never been there. I want to go. Chicago and Tokyo. Hi, Tokyo. I miss you, Tokyo. Kanagawa. I miss you, Japan. Oh, I really want to go back to Japan. All right. Well, I think we have a good crowd together now, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start by doing a little bit of a poll for you guys. So let me know if you can see that. If you can, go ahead and answer, have you had Amasake before? Let me know if you've ever tried this Amasake before or if you've never had it before ever. I'm really curious to see everyone listening in tonight who has had Amasake and who hasn't. So let's put our votes in and we'll see where we stand. All right, okay. I'm gonna share the results with you. Okay, so about half of you have had Amasake before and are Amasake lovers. And about 17% have had it but don't know much. Some don't know, and about 28% have never had Amasake before. Well, hopefully those of you who don't know much or who have not had Amasake before, I'll be able to introduce you to Amasake tonight and teach you some fun, interesting things about that. I have one final question before I show you my slideshow, and that question is, who has Amasake with them tonight to taste along with me? If you picked up some Amasake to enjoy with the webinar tonight, please let me know in the chat. I'd love to know how many of you are enjoying Amasake with me. If you're not, that's totally okay. I hope this will inspire you to get some Amasake soon. But if you're going to be sipping along with me, please let me know. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. All right, technology's working, I think. You should see the presentation screen, and you should have a little window of me up on the side. Let me know if everyone can see the presentation. Go ahead and get started. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Timothy Sullivan. I'm a brand ambassador for Hakkaisan Sake Brewery. I've been a long-time fan and educator about Japanese sake, Nihonshu. 4 years ago, I moved to Japan for 1 year, and I had the great chance to work for 12 months as a sake brewer at Hakkaisan Sake Brewery. Since then, I've been working as a brand ambassador for Hakkaisan, and one of the products that Hakkaisan introduced a few years ago to great success has been Hakkaisan Amasake. Now, we're going to talk all about Amasake tonight. I had the chance to visit the Amasake factory many times, although I didn't work there myself. I worked in the sake division, so I made sake for a year. But there are a lot of similarities and a lot of reasons that sake and Amasake are connected, and we're going to talk about that tonight. So I've been working as a brand ambassador for several years of Hakkaisan, and you may have seen some of my sake webinars, but tonight we're going to be focusing on delicious Amasake. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an introduction to what we're going to be talking about today. So for the webinar today, these are the topics we're going to cover. We're going to, someone just asked, will this be recorded? Yes, it will be recorded. What is fermentation? So that's one of the questions we're going to be addressing. Talk a little bit about what fermentation actually is and how it's achieved. Then we're going to talk about koji. That's going to be a big central point for our discussion tonight is koji. We're going to talk about the benefits of koji, what makes koji healthy and good for our bodies. Then I'm going to introduce you to the Hakkaisan Amasake, and that is an offshoot of the study of koji. And then we're going to do a really fun tasting. I have all my goodies here with me right on my desk. And we're going to do a tasting, and I'm going to give you a whole bunch of serving suggestions for drinking and consuming Amasake. And I'm going to do a little tasting right here and give you my live reaction. Some of the mixes that we're going to do tonight I've never had before, so you're going to see my live reaction, live on Zoom. And then we're going to end up with a little bit of a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, I'll leave some time at the end for addressing those questions. All right. So let's go to the first slide, and that is all about what is fermentation. So fermentation is defined as the process of a microorganism breaking down an organic substance into a new form or into something simpler or smaller. So it's a breakdown of organic matter. And there's a few ways that we're going to look at tonight that fermentation actually happens, and it involves microorganisms. The first microorganism we're going to look at is bacteria. So bacteria was discovered in the 1600s when they had their very first, very rudimentary microscopes. They looked at pond scum and things like that, and they saw these little animals in the water, and they discovered bacteria. Bacteria is a single-celled organism, and it's one of the microorganisms that is an engine of fermentation. The next microorganism we're going to look at is fungus. So fungus comes in different forms. One form is mold, and mold is a form of fungus that grows in these multi-celled filaments called hyphae. And here on the slide on the left, you see what almost looks like a flower with the filaments reaching out. That is the form for mold. And we're all, familiar basically with mold around. If we've left something too long in the refrigerator, mold can start to grow on things. So we've all seen mold in person. And a lot of people have bad associations with mold. But in the culinary realm, mold can be an engine for making something really, really delicious. And the next type of fungus we're going to look at is yeast. And you might be very, very well familiar with yeast for its role in alcoholic fermentation. But yeast works in many ways to break down different ingredients into a new form or a simpler form, our definition of fermentation. So we have, again, bacteria and then fungus. And under fungus, we have both mold and yeast. So let's look at some of the fermented foods of the world. And you might be familiar with some of these, and we're going to look at how each of these gets fermented. Beer, cheese, yogurt, sauerkraut, which I love, sourdough bread or bread, and kimchi. So let's take a look at these foods of the world and see what of those microorganisms we talked about, which one of them is involved here. So for beer, we have a yeast strain called Saccharomyces cerevisiae. This is for ale yeast. There's a version of Saccharomyces cerevisiae yeast for ale. Please remember that yeast. There's another Saccharomyces yeast used for lager beer. And this is alcoholic fermentation. So this is yeast eating sugar and giving off alcohol and CO2. It's a very well-known form of fermentation that makes wine, beer, and sake. Another type of fermentation is used to make cheese. So that would be lactic acid bacteria. So this is that first item I mentioned on the previous slide, the world of bacteria. So bacteria breaks down the components and creates this fermentation for cheese. And this type of bacteria is known as lactobacillus. For yogurt, very similar. Lactic acid bacteria or lactobacillus is used to create yogurt. The same for sauerkraut, lactobacillus bacteria. And for sourdough bread, we have another yeast. Again, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, but it is baker's yeast strain of that type of yeast. And then to make kimchi, lactic acid bacteria again. So as you can see, we have a lot of commonality between these foods of the world and how they're fermented. I researched a little bit about how this all began. When you think about fermentation, there's a very fine line between cuisine fermentation and rotting, something going bad and decomposing. And the definition of fermentation is very close to decomposition. I wondered, how did humans discover fermentation? And I did some research in it, and some scholars believe that fermentation was discovered as a desperate attempt by humans to try to preserve food, to get food to last longer. If you had to survive a long winter and you needed food preserved, they experimented and eventually perfected ways of changing food, fermenting food to help preserve it. And then that created food culture, and that differentiates rotting from fermentation. Okay, now we're going to move to Japan, and we want to look at some of the fermented foods of Japan and see what we see here. Okay, so the first food we're going to look at is the most infamous fermented food from Japan. This is natto. This is fermented soybeans. Please let me know in the chat if you are a natto hater like I am. I admit it, I am a natto hater. For Japanese people who grow up with natto, it's something that's very easy to eat. A lot of people really enjoy it. I have never been able to enjoy natto. It's okay. We have some natto haters as well. Love that. Okay. It's very polarizing in the chat. Yes. So natto is fermented with a bacteria, Bacillus subtilis. And this is a special strain of bacteria used to ferment natto. And for a lot of people, natto is the aroma and the texture is a little bit too much to overcome. But again, for those people that grew up with it, it's something that's very healthy and very well loved in Japan as a breakfast food, believe it or not. Okay, moving on. Now from here on out, we're gonna see some commonality that we wanna pay attention to. So the next item we're gonna look at is miso. So miso uses this very important ingredient called koji. Now koji is a type of mold. Remember we looked at those microorganisms that cause fermentation, and one of them was mold. And there's a strain of mold called Aspergillus oryzae. And this is a very, very special mold we're going to talk a lot about in just a minute, but just keep that in the back of your mind. It also uses lactic acid bacteria, and there's also yeast involved in the production of miso. It's a type of yeast that is very tolerant to salt. They use a lot of salt when they make miso. That keeps bad bacteria out and only allows certain strains of yeast and bacteria to survive. And those involvements of all those microorganisms lends to the very complex and deep flavor of miso. So let's move on to another fermented food from Japan, and that would be soy sauce. So this is also from soybeans. This uses the koji, Aspergillus oryzae mold, also lactic acid bacteria, and the same salt-tolerant yeast is used. So these ingredients also are used to make soy sauce as well. And the deep complex flavor, that umami flavor you get, is released when the mold does its action. And we'll talk more about that very soon. The next thing we're going to look at is sake. All right, everybody's favorite, my favorite. This uses, look at this, koji again, Aspergillus oryzae. And the role of the koji is to break down starch into sugar. And then we also use lactic acid bacteria, and we also use a type of sake yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. There's that name again. So these microorganisms are all used to make sake. And the final fermented food, there's a lot more we could talk about, but for the final fermented food, we're going to look at Amasake, the star of tonight. And what we use to make Amasake, in most cases, is koji, again, Aspergillus oryzae mold, and also a little bit of lactic acid bacteria. So you'll notice a pattern when you look at this slide. A lot of the key fermented foods from Japan use this stuff called koji. So we're going to hone in and look at this koji. All right. So what is koji? First of all, you'll see on the slide, no joke, koji is the national fungus of Japan. Was declared so by the government. So it's a very, very important mold. It is a friendly mold that makes delicious foods. It's not toxic or harmful to humans in any way. This slide on the upper left and upper right, you see again that microscopic view of what the mold looks like, what this fungus looks like. And it has the hyphae, or the filaments that reach out from it. And what we do with this mold is, in order to use it in amazake or in nihonshu, in alcoholic sake, we have to grow the mold onto a substrate, onto a base. And what do we use? We use rice. So on the left, the far left picture here, you can see the koji spores themselves. So it's a yellowish greenish color. And these are powdery spores. And those spores get then sprinkled onto rice. And the second picture over, you see them actually sprinkling the spores onto the rice. The next picture over is the propagation stage. That's where they actually grow the mold onto the rice. For the case of sake and for amazake, it takes about 48 hours, sometimes a little bit more. And in a very, very hot environment over 2 days, they grow and they propagate the mold onto a substrate of rice. And the picture on the right shows you the finished product. So when we say rice koji, that's what we're referring to. A lot of people shorten this just to say koji as well, meaning this finished product. So when you say koji in English, it can kind of mean the spores on their own, or it can mean this finished product, this molded rice. And in this picture, you can see the filaments coming out. So that's a very good photo of what to expect whenever you come across koji, the finished rice koji. Now we're going to look at what the role of koji is. I alluded to this briefly before. The role of koji is to break down carbohydrates or starch into sugar. And let's look at how this happens. So the reason that we have koji is to access something that we call enzymes. And enzymes are non-living things that are given off by koji, that they act as a catalyst for a chemical reaction within living cells. So you can think of the enzymes that come off of koji, and there's many, many of them, but one of them we're going to focus in on is called amylase. And this is a type of enzyme. You can think of it like a little scissors. And if we were to zoom in and look at the starch molecules in the rice, you can kind of think of it like a train, you know? All the cars stacked one after the other with a little caboose there at the end. And the carbohydrate or starch molecule is long and has many, many glucose molecules strung together. What the enzyme, amylase enzyme from koji does is it comes in like a scissors and it snips the starch into pieces and it breaks it off into individual glucose molecules. So we get a conversion of starch or carbohydrate into glucose or into sugar. So this is the primary role of koji, and this is what makes koji so very special. So this is the conversion of starch again into glucose or sugar. All right, so that's the magic of koji right there. So why do we want koji? Are there any other benefits besides simply getting sugar or glucose out of starch? Well, there are many benefits, and let's look at some of them now. So some of the benefits of koji. How does koji help us? The first one is that the enzymes that are in koji not only break starch into sugar, but they make other nutrients bioavailable to us when we eat them. For example, breaking down the nutrients in proteins to create amino acids. This is something that would create umami. The amino acids give us that umami or that savory taste. And this is also used in meat tenderizing. So if you put koji onto meat and you marinate it, you get this tenderizing effect because the enzymes are breaking down the proteins into amino acids. So it's a tenderizing, and it makes these nutrients bioavailable. When we eat them, some of the breaking down process is already done, so the absorption is better. Another thing enzymes do help us with digestion. The starch to glucose, that starch to sugar, or the protein to amino acid steps are jump-started when you apply koji to the food that you're going to eat or the drink you're going to drink. And this process pre-breaks down a lot of things, so our digestion is easier. Koji has dietary fiber in it, and it also creates oligosaccharides, which are sugars that have a few cells to them. And when these are broken down by the lactic acid bacteria, that creates more good gut bacteria. So this is like a food for good gut bacteria. So using koji creates the raw materials that healthy, good lactic acid bacteria needs to grow even more. So that's another way that koji can benefit us in our digestion and in our bodies. Now there's a long list here of vitamins that the making of koji produces, enables the production of these vitamins. So metabolizing bacteria, again, that good bacteria in our gut, gives off vitamins, and vitamins are necessary for what they call skin cell turnover, or the beautification of our skin. Some of the vitamins that we have are the B complex vitamins that are enabled through koji. B1, B2, B6, niacin, which is also known as B3, B5, and biotin, or also known as vitamin H. Now, these all have specific roles in the body, and we don't have time to go into all of them tonight, but just know that koji enables production of a wide range of very delicious foods and also very healthful vitamins and nutrients. And there's another substance created by koji called kojic acid. This is often used in cosmetics, and it has a lightening effect on melanin. So if I've seen, I did some research online and I saw people who have acne scars or dark patches on their skin use it to lighten their skin as a cosmetic. So that's another way that koji can benefit us. Now that we know a fair bit about koji, let's go on to look at Amasake in particular. All right, so first of all, the word Amasake means sweet sake. And there's two ways to spell Amasake. Some spell it with a Z, sometimes some people spell it with an S. I'm just going with the S version for tonight, but you can also see it written down as Amasake with a Z. It means sweet sake. And there are two types of Amasake that are produced in the world. Let's take a look at them. On the left, we're going to see Amasake made from koji. So we just did a deep dive into koji. So some Amasake that's made uses koji alone. The ingredients in that style of Amasake are koji, steamed rice, and water. That's it. This style of Amasake has no added sugar. It has absolutely no alcohol, and it has a very, very long history in Japan, going back centuries in Japan. Another variant of Amasake is Amasake that's made from sake kasu. So sake kasu is the leftover pressings from the production of alcoholic sake. So when you make sake, you have a mash with rice and koji and yeast all bubbling away. And when you want to extract the alcohol out of this mash, you have to press it. And when you press it, you have this leftover unfermented rice, and that's known as sake kasu. What some people do is they take sake kasu, this byproduct of sake production, and they mix it with water and sugar, and they make a version of what is called Amasake. This is also sometimes called shirosake or white sake. And this does contain alcohol, and this has added sugar to it. So these two are very different, and I want to make very clear that the product from Hakkaisan and what we're talking about tonight is the koji variety. So the package of Amasake from Hakkaisan says made only from koji right on the label in Japanese. So this is very clearly the koji only variety. So that's what we're going to focus on tonight. So for the Hakkaisan Amasake made from koji, only from koji, let's look at the stats for this particular product. So for a 102.5 gram serving, we have about 110 calories, 26 grams of carbohydrates, but it's really important to note that this is all natural carbohydrate from rice. There is no added sugar in Hakkaisan Amasake. You have 1 gram of protein. That comes from some of the rice that there's a bit of protein in rice, so we get a bit of residual protein from that. 10 milligrams of potassium. And the rice that is used to make this Hakkaisan Amasake is milled down or polished down to 60% remaining. This removes some of the outer layers of the rice grain that they use to make the koji and to make the Amasake. And this creates kind of a smoother taste and less roughness in the Amasake. A very, very delicious way to create a smoother Amasake. And it comes in 2 sizes here in the States. There's a 14.4 ounce bottle, and there is a 29.1 ounce bottle. All right. And let's look at the flavor profile of Amasake, this Hakkaisan Amasake. So it's sweet, creamy with a little bits of rice. It has some koji taste and koji aroma, and it also has rice taste and rice aroma. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some out right now. Got it right here. And I'm going to pour some and taste it. So this is going to be our first tasting of many tonight. I'm going to put it right in here. And if I hold this up, you see, it looks like cloudy nigori sake, but this is just rice, water, and koji together. And you see there's some chunks that cling to the side of the glass. That is some of the rice particles that are still left in there. So if you give it a smell, it has a very distinct smell of koji. Koji is sometimes described as smelling like chestnuts or a little bit of a nutty smell to it. You definitely get that. And you also get the smell of rice as well. So I'm going to give, this is straight up Amasake. I'm going to give this a taste. Very good. So it has sweetness to it, and it has a richness to it as well. And there's a bit of savoriness. It's quite sweet, but there's that umami characteristic in the background that balances out just a little bit, that sweetness. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at some serving suggestions. And this is when I'm going to taste a bunch of variations. So the first one we just did, which is straight up. So right out of the bottle into the glass. And you can serve this warm or chilled. I'm having it chilled here. Now, I want to tell you just a quick story about my conversion to loving Amasake. It was 2019. Early 2019, and I was in Japan for a business trip. And I was visiting Hakkaisan brewery that makes this product. And unfortunately, I came down with a bit of a cold and I wasn't feeling well. And it was the last few days of my trip. And one of my colleagues at Hakkaisan gave me a bottle of Amasake, and she said, drink this every day and see what it does. And no joke, I am not kidding you. I drank that every day, and I felt better very, very quickly. I felt my energy levels go up, and I sound like an infomercial, but I really honestly had this experience, and it made me a big fan of Amasake ever since then. So whenever I'm in Japan, and Amasake is ubiquitous in Japan, it's all over. You can buy it in many convenience stores. You can buy it all over the country, and it's very popular, and it's known as a sports recovery drink or a fatigue fighter drink. And it really filled that role for me. And I felt better very, very soon. So I became a firm believer in Amasake. And whenever I have the chance to get it here in the States, I always get it. And consuming a little bit, as much as I can, really helps maintain my energy levels. And I view it as like, some people describe it as liquid drinkable IV drip. So it's something that you can sip on that will really boost your immune system, help your gut bacteria, and it's just really, really all around very, very good for you. So this is the straight up version. Let's take a look at what we have next. And again, some of these I have not tried myself, so we're gonna have some fun pairing these. All right. All right, so the next one is mixing Amasake with other liquids. All right, so milk, a milk alternative like almond milk or soy milk, lemon, orange juice, and I threw in chocolate syrup because I'm a big chocolate fan. So let's try almond milk. So I have some almond milk here, and I'm gonna mix in some Amasake with that. And let's see what we get. So I'm a big almond milk fan. I drink it every morning with my coffee. Ooh. All right. Oh, some people are saying they can't see me. Is anyone having trouble seeing me? Let me know in the chat if you can't see you. Okay, I'm fine, good. All right, so this almond milk has a nutty taste to it, a little bit of a nutty smell, obviously, and putting the sweet Amasake in there makes it smell almost like marzipan, like, an almond candy or almond sweet. It's really delicious. It just brightens up the sweetness of Amasake. And I have to say I'm drinking unsweetened almond milk. So almond milk with Amasake, thumbs up from me. This is really good. So the other thing I have here is I have some freshly squeezed lemon juice. All right, so I am a little bit nervous about this one, but we're gonna put some Amasake in here, and I'm gonna mix in the lemon juice. And I've heard this is refreshing, and this is like a summer version of Amasake lemonade. And you can also put honey in here as well, which I didn't have. Oh, wow. I'm gonna put a little bit more. Smelled a little bit too lemony. Okay, now I've got it mixed up. Wow, that's really interesting. You know, Amazake is so sweet and rich. Putting the citric acid in there really dials back the sweetness tremendously. Really interesting. You know, I thought honestly I wouldn't like this one, but it is very refreshing and very bright. And it takes so much of the sweetness out of Amazake. It gives it more balance than almost any other mixing I've tried. And I can imagine with just a little bit of honey in here, adds another layer of flavor. I love honey. I just didn't have any today. Very, very good. Okay. And another one that I brought with me, again, this was totally my idea, is a little chocolate syrup. So I guess, you know, during these difficult times, it's okay to eat dessert first, isn't it? I think so. So I'm gonna pour some Amazake in my clean glass. And then I have some chocolate syrup right here. And I'm gonna take some of this and I'm gonna mix this in. Let's see if I can do this. I'm just gonna mix this in. Oh, it's turning, looks like chocolate milk. Okay. All right. I'm gonna give this a taste. So this is like a chocolate syrup and Amazake mixture. Oh man, that's good. That is really good. I also brought some sea salt, and I thought I might sprinkle some sea salt on here. Like a mad scientist today. All right. So I've got some sea salt in there. We're gonna taste another sip. That's good too. Oh my gosh, it adds a whole other layer of flavor and dials back the sweetness a little bit. Oh, that's so good. Sea salt, chocolate milk, and Amazake. You heard it here first. I think I just invented this. I don't know, maybe I did. Okay, so that's mixing it with other liquids. Let's see what other serving suggestions we have. All right, so you can mix Amazake with other foods as well. Some suggestions are taking like unsweetened yogurt and mixing Amazake with that. In many of these cases, we're taking Amazake and we're using it as a sweetener for things that might be unsweetened. So it's an all-natural carbohydrate, no added sugar, and it's a way to bring sweetness to things that I think is a little bit more healthy than just added sugar or, you know, glucose from the factory. Another way you can serve it is with fresh cut fruit and pour Amazake right over it, almost like strawberries and cream. I've seen that. Really, really good. Oh, and you can pour over cold cereal or cat meal. No, it's oatmeal. Sorry, guys. I must have been thinking about cats. Cold cereal or oatmeal, and use it like milk, like you would having it with cereal or oatmeal. That's another way you can do it, and it has a built-in sweetness to it, so that's a really wonderful thing to try. I saw this online, but I've never tried this. Mixing Amazake with almond butter or tahini and using it as a spread on toast. That's something I would love to try in the future, and looks really interesting. It looked really good in the pictures I saw, but I haven't had a chance to try that yet. And the next one is mixing with ginger powder or with ginger infused water. And this one I have. So before the class began tonight, I prepared this solution. So I just boiled some cut up ginger. I boiled it in water and I strained the ginger off. All right, so I have like a ginger concentrate or a little bit of ginger water. And I'm gonna take some Amazake. Okay, and I'm gonna take some of this ginger infused water and we're gonna mix this in. Okay, I don't know how much to add, so I'm just gonna wing it. Maybe a little more. I'm just judging by the smell. Okay. Oh my gosh. That's really good. It is spicy. So the ginger flavor is coming through bright and clear, and it makes the texture of the Amazake much more watery because I just added a bunch of water to it, obviously. But the ginger flavor is very spicy and peppery and really delicious. So I would imagine if I was coming down with a cold or not feeling so well, this is a 1-2 punch for feeling better if you have a little bit of a cold coming on, because you get the energy boost from the ginger and you get all the health benefits from the Amazake. So this is another thumbs up for me. And it smells, if you like ginger candy or you like the flavor of ginger, you're gonna love this. So good. Okay, what do we have next? Amazake latte. So mixing Amazake with coffee. So you can serve Amazake mixed with coffee. You can serve it warm, or you can serve it cold or iced. And you can also try it, as I'm going to right now, with coffee concentrate. Have you guys ever tried coffee concentrate? I'm a big iced coffee drinker, even in the winter. And I buy this stuff called Grady's Cold Brew, which is a concentrate of iced coffee. So if you drink this straight, you're going to shoot right to the moon. It is very, very concentrated. So you're meant to mix this with, I mix it with almond milk every morning, but you can mix it also with hot water or cold water to make a standard intensity of coffee. And what I'm going to do is take some of this coffee concentrate and I'm going to mix it with the Amazake. Okay, let's see here. So here's my Amazake, and I'm gonna pour in just a touch of this concentrate because it's pretty powerful. And I'm gonna mix it till this is like the color I like my coffee. And you can see that there's chunks of rice floating around in there. If this were my almond milk, I would be worried, but it is, I know that that's healthy rice in there. Okay, so I never add sugar to my coffee. I am a no sugar person when it comes to coffee. But this, if you like sugar in your coffee, that's just what this Amazake does. It provides a milk alternative and it sweetens the coffee as well. So this kind of reminds me of Vietnamese coffee a little bit, like a coffee with a sweet edge, sweet creamy edge to it. Really, really good. This would pair really well with the chocolate syrup Amazake, I think. Or I could mix chocolate syrup in here with the coffee and you can have a mocha. Oh my God. Okay. I think we're getting some really good ideas now. All right. And I have two more. Let's see what the next one is. Ooh, this one I'm excited about. The next one is Amazake smoothie. So this is taking frozen fruits and blending them with Amazake. And if desired, cutting that with almond milk. So you can also add ice or a banana if you want extra creaminess. And right before our seminar, I actually created a smoothie. And I have it right here in my blender. This is a mixture of frozen strawberries, frozen banana, a little bit of almond milk, and Amazake. So those 4 ingredients. And I'm going to go ahead and pour this into my glass. Oh my God, guys. So this smells crazy like strawberries. So it is a smoothie. And the Amazake gives it body. Again, you can see little bits of rice floating around in there. It smells like a smoothie from Jamba Juice. It really smells amazing. Oh my gosh, so good. And it doesn't taste like koji. It doesn't taste like rice. The Amazake in this case just adds nutrients and it adds sweetness, all natural sweetness. smoothies with fruit are naturally sweet, and this just dials up the intensity a little bit. I know a lot of people who add stevia or add other natural sweeteners to their smoothies. With this Amasake, you get the creaminess from the Amasake, and you also get the sweetness. So you wouldn't need to add stevia or any other type of sweetener to your smoothie if that's something you do. This is really, really good. All right, so I have one more. I had to use like every glass in my house to do this demonstration. So I have one more glass here. And that is something I saved till the end, which is matcha Amasake. Now, I am a big fan of matcha green tea. So I am going to take Amasake, put it in this glass here, okay? And I have some matcha powder. And I'm gonna try to do this without getting green all over myself. And I'm gonna put some matcha powder right in the Amasake. I'm gonna mix this up. Okay, sorry if I'm mixing right into the microphone. I'm gonna add a little bit more Amasake. It's looking a little dark. And this might need a little bit of a wire whisk. Just using a spoon here. While I stir this, when I was a little kid, we would make a lot of chocolate milk from powdered quick. Did you guys have that when you were kids, if you lived in the States? And sometimes it would get clumpy. That's a little bit what's happening here. So I'm just gonna have to deal with that. But let's give it a taste. I have a few matcha clumps on top, but I'm just gonna taste the Amasake. Oh my gosh, that's really good too. Oh, that is super yummy. If you like matcha lattes or matcha anything, this is like matcha with a super yummy, umami-rich milk, and then it has an all-natural sweetness to it. So watch out, Starbucks. Amasake matcha is coming your way. This is absolutely killer, guys. I really, really love it. So good. I just have to work on my mixing techniques for the matcha. Wow, that's really good. Okay, so those are all the serving suggestions that I came up with, and I just wanted to, we're gonna do a little bit of a Q&A now. But before we do the Q&A, I wanted to ask you guys, let me get out of here. And now I wanted to, let's see. Trying to launch another poll that I did. There we go, poll number 2. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys another poll real quick. And this is which of these serving suggestions that I just explained to you and tasted in front of you, which one do you think sounds the most delicious? So please go ahead and give us your rating on the poll and let us know what of those that we talked about just now, which one of those sounds good to you? I kind of raved about a lot of them. I'll give you some time to answer in the poll, and we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A before we wind up at 9 o'clock here on the East Coast. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A panel. I'll try to get some out of the chat. Okay. All right. Here's what the poll says. All right. So as you can see, green tea wins out. I couldn't agree more. I think it was absolutely fantastic. 37% wanted the Amasake with matcha. I just have to learn how to mix it a little better. I'll get better at that. Next was coffee. We have a lot of coffee lovers out there. Excellent. I loved the coffee as well. And it was with my coffee that I drink every day. So I love that specific flavor in particular. So that was fantastic. Smoothie straight up and poured over fruit and cereal. A few of you have something else in mind. And if you want to share your ideas for mixing Amasake, please let us know in the chat and we'll go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, let's see if we have any questions. Okay, here's a question. Is the rice used in the koji only Amasake the same types and quality of rice that would be used in the alcoholic sake? Great question. The rice is not always exactly the same. There are strains of rice that we use to make the Amasake that we do use in some of the sake, but it's not the primary strains that we use to make most of our sake. But it is the same that we use in some of them. So there is some overlap there. Let's see. No sugars, but 25 grams of carbs. Is it keto friendly? In other words, would it cause insulin spike? Well, if you have insulin issues, we would probably not recommend that you drink large amounts of Amasake. 25 grams of carbohydrates, there's a fair amount of sugar in here, provides a lot of natural sweetness, but it will give you a regular insulin reaction as if you had sugar from any other source. So if you have insulin issues or you're very, very strictly on the keto diet, Amasake may not be the best thing to drink in big amounts. But given the health benefits, I try to put small amounts in different drinks and mix it in with things a little bit to provide a natural sweetness, but just drinking lots of it straight might not be good if you have a keto diet or if you have insulin issues. What do you think of Amasake mixed with sake or in cocktails? Yeah, I was thinking of doing a whole section on Amasake cocktails, but we just didn't have time in this particular webinar to go too much into cocktails. But there's definitely applications for mixing Amasake with sake or mixing Amasake with alcohol. And we can do a whole other webinar in the future on that topic. But it's definitely a very good thing, and there's lots of ways you can do it. When I was researching, there's many recipes online you can look at for Amasake cocktails and Amasake with alcohol. But one thing that I was thinking of just off the top of my head was like a pina colada type of cocktail, mixing it with rum. It has that built-in creaminess, and you know, you can just let your imagination go wild. So I think there would be lots of applications for Amasake and alcohol, but we'll make another webinar about that one. All right. Let's see. What is the best way to store Amasake? Great question. So Amasake is shipped in the US. When we ship it from Japan to the US, it's shipped frozen. It's a perishable product, so it's shipped frozen, and it'll, when you order it, it should arrive at your house frozen. And we were working with MTC Kitchen here in the New York area. If any of you are in New York, you can order Hakkaisan Amasake from mtckitchen.com, and it arrives next day, and it is shipped frozen. And then I did some tests in the refrigerator, and it takes almost exactly 24 hours to defrost in a regular refrigerator. So just take it out the morning before you want to drink it the next day, and it is ready to go, perfectly defrosted and fresh as can be. So it's shipped all the way from Japan frozen. You want to store it frozen until you're ready to drink it. Once it's opened, you want to drink it within 3 or 4 days or so. How long will it take to defrost? I just answered that. It takes just about 1 day to defrost. Can you make Amasake with Amasake powder and then add it to sake? Not sure I understand the question. Amasake powder. Not sure what that is. So if you have any clarity on that, just let me know. Let's see. What is the recommended daily intake for health? 2 ounces, 3 ounces. I think for a daily intake, you can do a small amount. I think 3 to 4 ounces would be great. And that's something you could mix with your coffee in the morning, or again, take in that way that, you use it as a mixer, or you might pour a little bit on your cereal. You can mix it in with milk. You can mix it in with almond milk, and you get all those health benefits from the koji alongside your regular routine. So I try to fold it in with my morning routine. I find it gives me a little boost of energy, makes me feel great. So I have a little bit every day. You don't need to drink gallons and gallons every day, because it does have quite a bit of carbohydrate in it. But if you have a bit every day, I think you'll get all the benefits from the koji without too much added carbohydrate. Okay. What's the difference between Amasake and Nigori sake? That's a great question. So Amasake is this non-alcoholic koji rice drink. And Nigori sake is an alcoholic nihonshu, or alcoholic sake. And what the difference is that when we make Amasake, what we've been tasting today, we convert starch into sugar using koji, and then we stop, and then we drink it. What they do with Nigori sake is they add yeast at that point, and then the yeast converts the sugar to alcohol. So there's an additional step of fermentation. And this second step of fermentation, each sugar gives off alcohol and CO2. So if you make Nigori or cloudy sake, that's alcoholic nihonshu, alcoholic sake, that's been coarsely pressed when the fermentation is done. This does not use any kind of yeast, so it has no alcohol, just that first step of starch to sugar. All right, that was a great question. Do you recommend to serve to children? That's a great question as well. I actually read that this is used as baby food sometimes in Japan, because it contains no alcohol and it has a lot of health benefits from all those enzymes and amino acids that get produced from the koji. So I think you can definitely serve this to children. Again, you just want to keep an eye on the sugar level so that it doesn't get too much, but it's absolutely safe to serve to children. And I think a lot of kids in Japan have had Amasake growing up their whole lives, and even served to babies. So it's very safe to serve to kids. Are there many Amasake makers in the USA? Well, there are very, very few. I think we can all agree that Amasake is not something that's very well known here in the States, but it is something that I think more and more people should know about. I think there are a few very, very small craft makers of Amasake in the States, but Hakkaisan is one of the first big producers from Japan to export high quality koji only Amasake. So please look for the Hakkaisan brand. You'll get a very, very high quality direct from Japan. And I can tell you, after drinking all this tonight, it's absolutely delicious. Okay. Shelf life after defrosting. I generally recommend drinking about 3 or 4 days after defrosting. So it's perfectly safe, sent frozen. You'll get it after you defrost it. You want to drink the bottle within 3 to 4 days or so. And we'll just see if there's one more question. When you mix, do you randomly adjust the taste, or do you have a recommended measurement? That is a great question. I randomly mixed, as you saw tonight, just trying things out. What I was doing is I was actually putting in the lemon and I was smelling it. And if it smelled too much like lemon, I would add a little bit more Amasake. Totally winging it. I think that's a great way to start so that you can find the balance you like. If you're mixing chocolate syrup with the Amasake, or if you're mixing Amasake into your strawberry smoothie, you're going to find the balance that works for you. And then, you can just make a note of how much strawberry to how much Amasake works for you. But my advice is really just to try it out. It's a very delicious way to experiment, and you can find the style that works for you. All right. Well, we're getting towards the end of our hour. I want to thank all of you so much for joining me tonight. I hope you had fun talking about Amasake with me and chatting with me about Amasake. If you're interested in learning more about Hakkaisan, please visit our website, Hakkaisan.com. You can also follow us on Instagram or Twitter. That would be at at Hakkaisan Sake. I almost said Amasake. At Hakkaisan Sake. And we're also on Facebook at Hakkaisan Sake, facebook.com/Hakkaisan Sake. So you can find us on all the social media and also visit our website, Hakkaisan.com. And as I mentioned before, if you're in the New York City area, MTC Kitchen is selling this. And also on the West Coast, there's many outlets where you can buy Amasake as well. So please look for it in your stores. If they don't sell it, ask them to carry it. It's something that's healthy and delicious. I hope you all enjoyed the webinar tonight. I had a lot of fun. It was really great chatting with all of you. Thank you so much. And we will see you in the next Hakkaisan webinar. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. It was a pleasure. Hope to see you all soon. Thanks for tuning in.